Well, hi guys, my name is Paul, this is Plan Zed. Welcome to the session. Now, hopefully you've seen the last video that I put up, which is explaining how to connect 2 notes cab M to your send returns, which we're using here. We've got them split at the moment, but I've got several patches for us to look at and things to show you. Here we have a Ribbon 121 on a Vox cabinet, and here we have SM57 again on a Vox cabinet. We're using the 2 notes voice 30, which is a silver bell, 1966 silver bell, I would imagine. I've got my diamond amp from GT1000, which is a Vox AC30 style amp. We're on the Tele, got the neck pickup, and in our first patch I've got all the 5s happening. Gain at 50, sag at 5, resonance at 5, level at 55, bass at 50, middle at 50, treble at 50, presence at 50. And I've done exactly the same thing on both amps. Now, in a couple of videos time, we're going to be dialing in a twin. Well, next video is twins, and then we're going to be doing a blended patch where we have the Vox and a twin, with a twin and a Vox and one microphone for each. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this works out. Now, just so you can understand some principles and way of working, we've got an EQ dealing with lows before the amps, taking out 160, Q of 8 minus 6, 250 the same. Then we have the amps, got the noise suppression after the amps, they're both set the same. Threshold at 70, release 0, set to input. Then the send returns, and then I have, unusually, my high cut, low cut here, and my low mids here. Now what I'm going to do is I've got this set up to show you something. But what we're going to do is I'm going to put my high, low cut here at the end of the chain, where I'm also dealing with some high frequencies. So there's some whistlers here. I'm going to show you when we set up the twin how to use these EQs in this particular patch to find problem frequencies on each of the microphones. So 315 minus 6, Q of 16, and 4K. But I've got my high cut at 8K and my low cut at 125. Before that, I would have my EQ that's, and this is what's happening in most of the other patches, in all the other patches actually, pretty much. I have plus 3 on the level here, so I take off 3 of the highs, but I'm leaving the lows alone, so they're being bumped with this level. Because I've taken out the frequencies I don't want, I'm able to boost the clean lows I do want after the amp, so I'm doing it in this block, okay? At the same time, I'm taking out 400 on a wired Q, 0.5, minus 1 dB. So that's minus 1 dB on a Q of 0.5. And then at 500, I'm taking a tighter Q of 4 of minus 500 minus 6 dB. And then we've spoken about the high cut one. But for the moment, I'm just going to put this over here, because this patch is actually just set up for me to figure out what frequencies I want from the amps across the patches we're going to look at in a minute. So this was my starting point. And as I say, I can dial these in differently to widen my stereo spread, but let's just talk about a few functions here. So what happens is we've got our EQ set that we discussed and the amp business happening here. Got my drives and compressors down here. We come down here, we hit a divide where I can split my signal in several ways. But before we get to that divide, let's talk about this divide first here, where we've got our 2 amps. Now I've got it set to dual. We can have it on single. And there I'm coming out the left side because because here at the mixer we're set to left right, okay? Leave the spread in the middle for this, unless you want to widen your spread, yeah? So let's say I've actually got in this patch an assign here, this one, that puts me in that place. where I've got my stereo ampage. Now, again, with different amps, this is just a template, so I'm going to be dumping different amps into here. We'll get a different take on that spread, and in a moment we're going to be looking at a patch where we'll get a look at that three-dimensional aspect. Now here I'm splitting my signal up so I can do wet-dry, because in contrast to all the videos I've been doing over the last year, I've gone back to this way of working. So at the moment I've got my main outs actually turned off, and I'm using my sub-outs to go to the mixing desk that you're hearing. My main outs I put bass through here. I'm going to use this for sub frequencies only when I do gigs, because I'm running to a mixer, then loopers, and then it goes to front of house. So my mix is pretty much done before the engineer gets to look at it, is the plan. So I've got two gain stages in here. We're running in stereo, and here, rather than having the reverb block here with my dry signal coming through, let's turn that off. Let's just pull up that reverb a bit. Okay, rather than doing that, I'm putting it into a divide, leaving it completely wet, giving myself the wet dry that I could get inside of that reverb there. However, I'm going to be showing you in a few patches one of the reasons why I do this. And I'll free up this divide and plug it in the other way, the way we just did, if I want to use this divide for something else. But it helps me get really clean mixes. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop this patch here, come out of there, and show you. Actually, before I do that, I need to show you this. Sorry, there's so much for me to think about in these patches, and I'm getting myself confused. Look. So here, one of the things I do here, as I mentioned, is I use this patch to find the frequencies I want to go and build the patches that we're going to look at in a moment. So here, I'll isolate. So when I go, let's go. Now we're listening to the 57 up the middle. This is the 57 on its own. This is the Ribbon 121 on its own. The amps are dialed in the same, and it's that difference with the microphones, those frequencies there, that is giving us our tone, our blend of the two microphones, okay? Now I could, as I've done in, I think, this patch here, I've got the stereo link on here, okay? So I'm using the blend now on my three different gain stages. So I've got 2 amps and 3 gain stages. So here we've got a low gain amp, and then when we get to this amp, this is also a low gain amp, but with a bit more gain, dialed in slightly differently. And then here, this is also a low gain amp. Go to the back pickup. Okay. We're using all the same principles, but we've got one EQ set here, one set of everything, because of our cabinet's a stereo link now. Let's come out of there. The patch next to it is exactly the same, but I'm using medium gains for each of the gain stages. That's what the MM stands for. Let's see what the big muff sounds like. Yeah, maybe I haven't dialed in the drives yet. I've just set the amps up and a few of the boosts and things, but I haven't done any of the fuzzes yet, so they'll need a bit of a tweak. in this patch here, I've got it set up exclusively using the same method as we looked at in the first one. Oh, before we do this, I want to show you something here. Now, we've got options. Well, because I've got this joined, I wanted to do a little something that I could use this divide for, but actually, because I've got the output split like this, I'm doing it here. So I've put my tremolo on the output, and over there, I've got a chorus. Now, the chorus will come on when I hit the button, and the trigger comes on. This is the three-dimensional aspect I'm talking about. We'll get this with amps. Okay. Now in these patches, obviously there's no divide to do any of my stereo splitting or anything like this. Don't need to. But as a tool when I'm live looping, I'll use this patch, for example, which is a hybrid of the first patch we looked at. But it allows me, when I hit this button, I automatically land in whichever patch I've selected, whichever amp I've selected with this one. And green is number 1 and red is number 2. So right and left, okay? So when I press this, I just automatically land wherever I've got it selected, okay? We've got different effects and things in here. Okay, so let's now come out of here, and you might remember I started doing a bit of a deep dive into reverbs, and I started doing the changes for those patches now. So let's have a little look at this one. So there's a couple here. So we've got this patch 1, where I've got the 3 gain stages in the 1 amp. What I'm doing is I've got all the gains for each of the changes at 60, and we start off in a low gain, a medium gain, and then a high gain. A couple of things might change. Oh, actually, look, not much changing there at all, just a little bit in the present. So let's have a look at what happened. Okay, now in this patch, I wanted to show you one of the reasons why I use divides to get my wet dries. In here, what's happening is the dry signal comes in, it hits this divide, and my clean signal passes over and then out to a compressor that we set up in the deep dives there, and then goes out of the outputs. My wet is in here, and I've got different things set up on these wets. Okay, but they're things that I want to apply to the reverb and not to my dry signal. Okay, now if my reverb was in my dry signal, and then, are you with me? So it will affect everything. But here I can isolate the wet. So for example, if we give ourselves a bit of feedback, I've got a distortion I can put on the reverb. Could then add in my sidechain here, running separately but also into the distortion. Actually, let's change that. So let's. Cook some nice distortion into the reverb, and I've got separately here this extra dimension happening. Let's turn that off, and it will keep feeding back. So the other reason I like to have my wets in a separate divide is I can solo them. We're now completely wet. Going to turn on a compressor down at the front here. In all of the patches I've got a compressor in here that's pretty much set up the same way. 30, 80, 60, plus 10, 4:1, and I've got 50% of the dry mix coming through. What we're going to do is we're going to try layering a couple of loops, and then we're going to stop, and then we're going to go to another patch, have a look at another little effect that I've set up. Okay, so I'm going to take a loop of that. Use the expression switch there to mess with the reverb a little bit. Now I've got that loop, we're going to come out of there. We're going to go across to this patch before we go to where I want to show you something else. Now here we've got a slightly different setup where I've got the 3 gain stages as we did in the other amp. You might remember a few patches ago. I've got a similar setup here, but I've got, right, a rotary on this one. So let's just gave it a little bit of extra jizz. Let's come out of there. We've given ourselves a bit of a soundscape. Now here I've got some patches where we've got some different things set up. Let's have a little look at this one. No, not that one. This one. Now what's happening here is we've got stereo amps. And I've got here in my delays so this time I'm using the reverb in a more conventional way, but I'm side chaining some distortions, delays, and other effects. In a similar way, hopefully, yeah, this one. Now this one found something quite nice. Let's just have a listen. There's a couple of things I want to draw your attention to in here. Let's put on the compression. So, as we come into the divide, here I'm taking away all the frequencies below 400. So we're kind of getting closer to a kind of lo-fi type tone. We've got the space echo in here. Using just the one head, loads of wow flutter, some modulation, no feedback, okay? So it just does one repeat. Then I'm giving it some stereo width. So look, if I come into this divide here, make it stereo, which is really nice. And because I've got the EQ on it, as in the 400 Hertz coming out of here, it's not fighting too much with me. And I can maybe okay, so I'm going to bring that high cut back a little bit, but if we want to give it some stereo width now, let's make this dual, open up this to, where did I have it? I think we want left, right here. Okay, lovely. And now it's around me, and I've got space in the middle, and it's not cluttering the mix, and it's giving my mix a bit more of a three-dimensional happening. Okay, now we've also got in here a couple of other things. So I have put in down here, we've got a bit of an octaver. Let's just bring back that reverb. Okay, let's try cracking on a fuzz. Let's stick on a bit of chorus. Notice I was routed via the 505, so I'm missing some of the frequencies. Now we've got them back. Bypassing the loopers. But let's bring the loopers in. Now if we want, let's get rid of the sub. We can stick this. That took me a little minute to get my loop in. What we're going to do is we're going to come out of that patch and now come down to left-right patch down here, where we're going to go stick on a compression, stick on auto wah, bit of delay. patch. What we've got going on. We've got the delays, reverb, reverse delay, just looping, oscillating into itself, going into the reverb in a side chain, dry signal passing over. Let's turn off the delay. Just let it continue to swell. The feedback carries on even though we've turned it off. Back the heel a touch and it will start to fade away behind me. Lovely. So I'm going to be able to build loads of different atmosphere, loads of different crazy effects, different kind of patches. We're going to start diving back into those reverbs set up now. We're going to dial in a twin next, and I'm going to show you how I use that first patch we looked at with the different EQs on the microphones. I'm going to show you how I find the frequencies for the twin when I dial it in, and we'll do that for all of the amps so you know exactly which frequencies to look for when using certain types of microphones. I found very similar whether you're using the Boss or other cabinets, IRs. It's just the width of the frequency and how you fish it out that might change, but the principles will remain the same. Anyway, hopefully you found that useful, and yeah, let's get cracking. The next video should be a bit shorter. I'll get focused per patch. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye.